Well, here we are today. My name's Charles Alder. Today we're talking with Phil Chavanne from Texas. Phil, welcome to EcoForce Global.
Thank you so much.
So you're in what part of Texas? For those in the rest of the world who don't know where Sailor Springs is, whereabouts are you?
Sailor Springs is in McCulloch County, which is in central Texas, really the very center of Texas, the heart of Texas. If you balance Texas on a pin, it goes right through our little town, which is 10 miles north of us. So we're in the Edwards Plateau, which is the Texas Hill Country. It's the hills and rivers region, a whole lot of different topography, a lot of diversity, a lot of rivers, and really just a beautiful green part of the state.
So most people that I'm aware of think of Texas as a fairly flat state. Is that correct? Are there many mountain ranges in Texas?
So it's fascinating. I don't ever accuse anyone of being wrong when they think of Texas being flat. You can go to whole swaths of Texas. You could be born in West Texas and in the Panhandle of Texas, and you could live there your whole life, and you could only know that part of Texas, and you think, wow, it's just really, really flat. And that would be true. East Texas is pine woods, not more than a rolling bit of topography. So that's real green, but real piney. South Texas is super flat. Central Texas, where we are, is very rolling. Some parts much more dramatic than others. And in far West Texas, in the Southwest, where you have what's called Big Bend National Park on the Rio Grande, is incredibly mountainous and wild and rugged and unchanging and beautiful, undeveloped, spectacular. So you have multiple different ecosystems in Texas alone that a lot of Texans even never get to see. So it's hard to answer that question.
Wow, it's a wide diversity then, isn't it? It's
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Certainly not like the stereotypical image of what Texas is.
It's too big of a place to have just one image, for sure.
Well, everything is big in Texas, they say anyway. Isn't that true?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's right.
So tell me about your, excuse me, tell me about your family. You've been on the land for multiple generations, or is?
Well, really two. Two generations. My grandfather was on the place, but he didn't own it. So two generations, now three with my kids. We live on the land. We manage a guest ranch on the ranch, on the property. And we do a whole lot of different events and activities with our guests from throughout the world. We do a lot of family reunions and weddings. But as much as anything, my heartbeat is really for restoring the ecosystem, doing restorative ecology on the land, and always figuring out ways that we can restore it back to the way it was before it was overgrazed, and the way it was before we created fire suppression. So much of the land has been changed because of those two things, overgrazing and fire suppression, that we want to restore it and get it back to a healthy state. So that's a lot of what we do. So
were you born on the property yourself?
No, I wasn't born here. I wish I was. It wasn't really purchased until I was a teenager, so I didn't have that opportunity. But born again, you could say it that way.
And your interest in agriculture, where was that born for you? What burns for you, and why?
Well, the long answer to the short question would be that when my dad died, we knew we had to take over the land and try to make it healthy. Right. And we had to do that in a lot of different ways, build a business and sustain it and take care of our family and that. But one of our four key values on the ranch was stewardship, servanthood, fellowship, adventure. Those are our four key values. And so stewardship, how do we do that? Well, I took many, many pages from the playbook of David Bamberger at Sela Bamberger Ranch Preserve in Texas. He's done it for 50 years there in a phenomenal way. And so I said, all right, how do we model that? So that's when I really started becoming introduced. It wasn't any kind of formal education. What it was a whole lot of YouTube videos and then self-study, and then a lot of conversations with people that knew a lot more than me, still having those, and learning about soil health and biodiversity, of course. And then I just became, every conservationist, I think, has one thing that really charges them up more than anything else. It could be birds, it could be grasses. For me, it's trees. I just fell in love with trees. I started to notice things that were around me my whole life, and I'd never really paid attention to why this tree does this and what it attracts and what insect migrations are affected and all those things, just the whole network. And because trees are much more permanent parts of the landscape, and you can affect those and grow them, of course, and nurture them and watch them in the course of a lifetime. That really charged me up and got me excited. And so I became a nerd for trees, and I planted every one I could find, and failed many, many times to try to plant trees, and planted them wrong, and didn't know about what kind of acorns to plant and what kind of soils, and wasted a lot of time and money, but learned a lot of different stuff. But that really, for whatever reason, was in my blood. And so that was what started me on the journey toward agriculture, as you said.
Do you think most people have an unhealthy lack of interest in the environment?
Well, okay, I wouldn't be accusatory. I would say that no one's introduced them to it. It'd be like anything else. Like you get frustrated with a young man when he doesn't know how to make a fire or change a tire, and then you realize he didn't have a dad to teach him how to do that, and so you say, okay, he just needs to patiently be introduced to those things. And that's how I would go about it. When it comes to nature, I do tours on this property every week with our guests. And we do a hayride and cave tour. We have a cave on the ranch, and they don't realize that most of them, that they're about to go on a 2-hour conservation tour where they're going to learn about all the different stuff in the ecosystem, but it's a captive audience, and they can't get away. They can't get off the hayride, and they end up loving it. It's the most popular thing we do, but they don't realize what's going on. And so more often than not, more often than 80%, I would say, you have customers that at the beginning are a little bit yawny about grasses, and at the end of it, they just, for the first time in their life, are going, oh wow, I had no idea that this affects this and that this affects that. And we used to have black bear, for instance, in the area where we live here. So the book Old Yeller, it's a famous book. It's a Disney movie years ago, a really fun movie. And it was written 10 miles from here. So it was real close, this famous story. Well, in the story, there's black bears and there's wolves and there's all these hogs. And now we don't have those anymore. But because we don't have those, the deer population have gone through the roof. And because the deer population have gone through the roof, the tree populations have gone down. All the little baby trees that are coming up, well, the deer eat those. And so all that biodiversity is gone away because we eliminated black bears. So you could sum it up that way. And because the white-tailed deer have multiplied. And so now all these wonderful trees, sycamores and elms and cherry trees that are native to this country, people don't even know that they're native because they've never seen them, because they are like ice cream to the white-tailed deer. And when I explain that to people, then they start realizing that this whole thing, this whole ecosystem is connected in every way. Everything has a consequence. Then they start wanting to get involved and seeing how they can affect it. And all of a sudden you have new trees, you have new butterflies, you have new birds, and you have a new ecosystem. And then you start preserving water and changing your springs. And then they start getting a little nerdy about it, and that's when it really gets fun. So I'm not too accusatory. I get it, because I didn't understand much of that either. But most people, when they're given a basic understanding of it, if they have a proclivity toward nature at all, they get pretty excited pretty quick.
It's really that immersed experience of being around and being educated by people who have a knowledge of it, then touching the grasses or touching the trees or seeing nature at its best, that those people are then beginning an appreciation of what our planet actually has and is capable of.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. That's
So
what I've seen, and I love to see it. Go ahead.
So how many different tree species would you have on your property?
So we have, it took me a while to figure this out, Charles. There wasn't a way that I could easily find out how many were native to the county. I had to go tree by tree and get on Wikipedia and see if it came into our little, bubble of the map and find it, and then verify that and talk to the government agencies. And there were several surprises in there. But so far, I've verified 66 different native tree species that are to our county. And our goal, we have one 30-acre pasture that I live on it. And so I get to monitor it and see it. So I'm much more connected to it. And my goal is to have all 66 of those native species established on that 30 acres. And we're at 44 now. Now, I could do all 66 next year, but it's much healthier for me to do 1 or 2 new ones a year with my children. You finish the things you bleed for. And so if they're engaged individually planting those trees as a very young sapling, then the chances of it surviving and growing in maturity is much higher biologically, but it's also better because they were there at 7 years old and they planted it and they saw this acorn. Like, we've got bur oaks that we planted, a spectacular tree and biggest acorns in the world. and we planted them as acorns. Now they're 4 or 5 feet tall, and I'll be long dead, but my kids will be able to point at that. I planted that tree when I was 3 years old, and now look at it coming up. And so that's what we're doing little by little every year. So I would say probably another 10 years or so, if we do two more species a year, get them established, and the droughts don't take them, that's why we get to watch them. Then we'll get to every one of them that's native to the county here.
So you've had drought over the last 12 or 18 months. I mean, we're recording this in November of 2022. So you've had drought for the last 12 months quite severely through your part of Texas?
Yes, sir.
And how has that affected the landscape and the grasses and trees over that period of time?
Well, it's been hard. It's always hard. There's I guess some silver linings to it, but most of it's just really, really taxing and exhausting and dusty. We have lost some trees. You're bound to lose some. We've even lost some mature trees that survived the last drought, which was even worse 10 years ago. I don't understand that yet. The difference with this drought and the last one, what it did to them, the periodic rains and didn't get enough. I don't know what affected it, but we did lose some. And yet we are surprised and delighted by the ones that we didn't lose. That were like, all right, they had a good song root system, and we did go in, we did supplemental water, and we had to. We said, all right, we're going to have to water these, 30 that are way away from any supplemental water themselves, and they haven't gotten rain in 2 months, and the heat level's been too high. And so we have had to babysit them to keep them afloat, but most of them have been just fine.
And farmers around you, do they have the same interest in the landscape and trees and grasses that you do, and how have they coped during the drought?
Well, I think they've had a very, very difficult run of it, for sure. To answer your first question, I don't know of anybody that wants to talk trees like I want to talk trees. And that meaning I don't know the most about trees, but locally we don't have a real attitude. We don't have a lot of enthusiasm about conservation in general, and ecosystem restoration. That's just not a topic that I get to have conversation about locally. I do it in the outside circles in other counties and other people that I've encountered, other landowners. But locally, there's not a whole lot of interest in that, and that's something that I would love to see change.
So when you're talking with those other farmers or landholders outside of your neck of the woods, is there a growing awareness of the importance of biodiversity and the concept of regenerative agriculture or more sustainable farming methods?
There definitely is outside of the circle that we're in, so we're kind of starting from scratch on that. But I mean, just an hour from here, there's ranches that are doing this, and it's become pervasive in the culture, that they all want to, look at that kind of grass. They get excited when they see this kind of grass, and when they see springs recharging and everything coming back. That's definitely part of that culture to the east of us toward Austin. And that makes a lot of sense, just given their education and their understanding of the landscape. Makes a lot of sense. The further west you get, the further behind we are on that stuff, and that's okay. It just means we got to slowly integrate it into the culture and have them realize, hey, this isn't political. This is natural. This has nothing to do with any system of government. I think it's a lot of what they would reject, is they would, okay, that's big government trying to tell me how to change my land and try to, no. This is just old stuff. If you figure out how to trap water and slow water down, that water then seeps in, percolates into your soils, recharges your springs, create pools of water, which then create different kind of biodiversity, and all that's the natural order of things. And when you overgraze it, which is man-made, and you destroy all that slowing down of water, you create a moonscape, and then the water runs down, and you have all that runoff and all that erosion. Then that's bad. And when you explain it to them in those ways, not in any kind of a tree hugger way, which is unfortunate, because I love to hug trees. I love trees, but in our country, there's a lot of that tree hugger, and they go, why would you protect trees? Well, trees are wonderful. They protect you. They shade you. They give you all this wood, and they bring all these wonderful species to you, and create a world of understanding if you give them time to look at it. And once they look at that and pay attention to that and are taught that, they get excited about it. But we just got to slowly do that. So long answer to short question, not as much as I wish. I wish there was more.
Yeah, I think around the world, I mean, at EcoForce, we certainly deal with farmers, and almost every farmer that we partner with has a concept of regenerative agriculture in their DNA. As they've become aware of it, they understand the value of it. They may not be able to fund the conversion from industrial to regenerative, and there's obviously a cost to that. You want to keep your crops growing while you're doing that conversion, and it's not an overnight sensation. But there certainly seems to be a growing awareness of a healthy biodiversity in your landscape will increase the profitability of your farming operations. You've just got to get to that point. And for some, it's a tipping point. Some, maybe it's a mentor in the industry that they recognize. And it's when that mentor changes over that they go, well, if it's okay for Phil, then okay, well, I'll change and I'll look at improving my ways. But there's always the early adopters. There's always those people who do the research, have the conversations, and like you suggest, it's very easy these days to get on YouTube or read about all these sorts of changes to agriculture that are happening around the world. That you don't have to wait for the next university course to come out to get educated from it. And you've probably learned far more by actually doing it than you would have learned from actually even studying it, I would imagine.
Well, it's true of anything, true of anything. So absolutely. Learning through failure, quite a number of tries and attempts and things that didn't work. And oh, darn, why didn't we think of this? And then you go back to the drawing board. But
so your children are immersed in what you're doing. How do they have conversations with their friends and family? Are their friends interested in what the kids are doing in terms of planting trees and the nature on the farm, or is that not necessarily a conversation that the kids are having?
I'm not aware that they're having conversations about planting trees on the ranch. If they're on the ranch, then they like to brag on it. They like to walk among it. And I'm always surprised when they do, like, oh, look, they get delighted by this, and they, oh, look at this. And then they want to tell people about this one time they did this. And just, we'll have guests that'll come on the ranch, not really my children, but we'll do prescribed burns on the ranch.
Right.
And I'll be doing a burn and a customer will come over. These are people just staying on the ranch and they've never seen a burn done before. Right. And so they go, can I take the torch and can I light this one little section just to say I did it? And I'm like, sure. So they go and light it, and it burns 100 feet and goes away. And then we'll have them 6 months later. They're driving through this part of Texas again, and they'll tell us, hey, we're driving by. Can we go see that spot that we burned? And I'm okay, sure. And they come over, and then sure enough, you can see the section that they burned is next to a section that was not burned. And the section that was burned is greener and richer than the other spot. All that nitrogen got restored, and they get excited and take pictures of it and taking selfies. It's just amazing. They're taking that ownership. They're not landowners themselves, so they don't have the opportunity to go to a piece of land and do that, but they feel like, hey, I contributed to something, and it gets in their blood and they get excited about it. So certainly, my kids have not done that. They're not doing burns yet, but they are proud of the things that we do on the ranch. I don't know how much they share with their friends, but they definitely are proud of it. Right.
Excellent. So in terms of connecting with other farmers in your area, how do you try and have the conversations with neighbors around what you're doing, or do you just find that it's not a subject that they're yet ready to engage in?
My experience is the hardest part of it is the first domino to fall. How do you start the conversation? How do you even get a forum where those people are in the room together? By their very nature, these are isolated, independent people. They're not gathering into community rooms very often. It's not like in the movies where the small town gets together to have a town hall and they all talk about things. We don't have that. I wish we did. And so it's always one-on-one. And it's usually a head scratcher when I'm talking about a lot of that stuff. They hadn't heard of it. And a lot of them are older. Mm-hmm. I'm definitely the young pup of the bunch in the area to be managing a piece of land like this. So, and that's across the bear, because this, when you're younger, people don't want to listen to you. They don't think you know what you're talking about. But it's one-on-one for me. With them, and slowly but surely. But like I said, I don't see any negative to it at all. I see they view it the same way. They go, wow, you know what, there is something to this. And look how the land is being beautified, and look how I'm retaining my soils. And, you know, there's a lot of economic, you know, positives as well. So
Yeah.
it's a no-brainer eventually.
Well, at the end of the day, I mean, unless the land that you live on is productive and it has a sustainable future, it will just become barren moonscape land, won't it? And it will lose any productive. And we are losing large tracts of land around the world to this industrialized agriculture and clearing and chemicals and other farming methods, which are more destructive than positive for the landscape.
Absolutely. And I've seen the small scale and large scale results of that, and want to do everything I can to fight against it, as you guys are. So we're in this fight together for sure.
Yeah. So Phil, we're looking to put 1,000 trees on your property over the next 12 months or 18 months, we would hope. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate you sharing with us your journey and your love of nature and trees. And we wish all you and your family well for Thanksgiving and the coming up Christmas. And we'll be in touch again shortly.
Thank you. Happy holidays to you. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you, Phil.
Alrighty.